basically that getting a stronger government control over the oil industry itself. That is, I think, a very important achievement for the government, because in the past the oil industry was terribly independent and basically did as it pleased and evaded paying its share of revenues to the central government. In terms of a potentially transformative policy in terms of economic policy, there I think is the creation of what has been called socialist enterprises and also of worker-controlled enterprises. Now this is something that's happened only on a very small scale, but I think it's very important because it really is a stepping stone towards transforming the economy. Because in the socialist enterprises and also in some of the worker-controlled enterprises, there's this concerted effort to, of course, introduce workplace democracy, but also to level the differences between management and workers, and to basically create greater social justice in the workplace. And this has been accompanied by a massive program of creating cooperatives, but this is, of course, and this is also something that people on the left have debated a long time, to what extent are cooperatives truly transformative. I think they're potentially transformative, especially if they follow in the lines of what in Venezuela are being called socialist enterprises, which are designed, like I said, to minimize the differences between management and worker. But, oh wow, getting 5 minutes already. But many of these cooperatives haven't lived up to the promise in Venezuela. That's why I would say that they're really reformative and not all that transformative. Again, one has to make a distinction in Venezuela between the regular cooperatives and the socialist enterprises and the worker-controlled enterprise. Next, in terms of macroeconomic policy, I think there nothing particularly transformative has really happened, but a lot of reform has happened. I think the government has gone on a concerted effort to, I would say not so far unsuccessful effort, but still, it's been a concerted effort to diversify the economy by putting a lot more resources in agricultural production and into other forms of industrial production in Venezuela. This has been undermined, though, precisely because of the strength of the oil industry, the continued strength of the oil industry, and this is actually also a regressive aspect of the economic policy, is that the government is still far too dependent on the oil revenues, and of course this is mostly you could call it luck, because the price of oil is so high right now, but of course it's also because of the increased revenues that are being gained from the oil industry. Still, that has undermined the diversification effort, and not only that, it also undermines, of course, I think, the idea that Venezuela might bear some responsibility in the world economy's dependence on oil and to the concomitant ecological effects that have. Then quickly, in terms of social policies, here again we find three different transformative and reformative and regressive mixed together. In terms of the reformative, of course, is the vast expansion of social programs in Venezuela, the social missions which have benefited millions of Venezuela in terms of community health programs, education programs for completing high school and everything, in terms of providing unemployed single mothers with a stipend for raising their kids, things like that. Those are all, I would say, reformative. The transformative aspect, though, of the social program is actually the effort to which the government has gone to involve citizens in the implementation of those social programs. That is, the social programs are not purely a top-down matter, as they used to be, but the communities are actively involved in organizing the social programs in their neighborhoods. So I think that's important in terms of transforming the nature of the state. The regressive aspect of the social programs, though, and this is actually something I'll get back to again at the very end if I have time, is that there are insufficient safeguards, I would say, against patronage and corruption, which are all legacies And this is something, again, that one has to be clear on. Venezuela is always being accused, or the Chavez government is always being accused of being rife with corruption and patronage. But I would say, actually, it's less than in the past, but it's still very persistent, and I think the government has not done enough to eliminate it. Then, in terms of foreign policy, very quickly, since I'm running out of time, here I would mainly mention a transformative aspect, which is Venezuela's effort to bring the third world together, which is really something that hasn't happened in a long time, and Venezuela has really taken a leading role in terms of trying to bring Latin America together, but also trying to get third world countries in general together to build what they call a multi- or pluripolar world in opposition to U.S. dominance in the international arena, and I think that a lot has been done in that sense. However, this has had a slightly regressive consequence, which is Venezuela's cooperation with and support for repressive regimes around the world. Now, again, this is something that, of course, within the left has been debated a lot, to what extent some of these regimes are truly repressive, but I would certainly think the Iranian regime that Venezuela has been cooperating with, the cooperation, I think, ends up, according to reports that I've heard from dissidents within Iran, ends up supporting the repressive nature of the Iranian government, and I think this is a problem that within Venezuela, within the government, people should be thinking more about what that means. Finally, in terms of, and this is not a policy area directly in terms of public policy, but in terms of the movement itself, that is the Bolivarian movement, here too I just want to quickly throw out a transformative and regressive aspect of the movement. The transformative aspect, of course, of the movement is that, and I think this is the most, something that's been happening recently, of course with slightly mixed results perhaps, but in general, is the creation of a unified socialist party in Venezuela, where it's really being made a very strong effort for the first time to organize a truly grassroots democratic party in Venezuela that really has never existed before, I would say. However, within the movement, there's also some regressive aspects, and these are, of course, the aspects that critics of the government always focus on. But I think it's important for progressives to pay attention to these and to be aware of them, because they exist. And that is one that I've already mentioned, the continuing clientelism and patronage that goes on within Venezuela. And the other aspect is the dependence of the Bolivarian movement on Chavez, the individual. Now, I hope that with the creation of the Unified Socialist Party, that will be overcome to some extent. But until now, that has been a severe problem for a variety of reasons, because it actually strengthens clientelism and patronage, and it also makes the movement very vulnerable to Chavez's eventual disappearance for whatever reason. So anyway, so this is kind of a rough schema for how I would begin to evaluate the Chavez government. Thank you.